All right, so good morning. I hope everyone's doing well today. So I kind of sort of didn't really hear most of what you just said. It sort of just came through as a little wonky, but so I'm going to be talking about gamification, right, in classrooms, how you think about doing it, why you might want to do it, concerns and problems that you might want to consider if you do it. Does that all sound good?
Yeah.
And this is really informal. I didn't prepare anything. So if at any point people have questions, you should stop me and we should talk about what it is that you all want to talk about. Okay? All right. So I'm trying to remember how long I've been doing this. Are people familiar with the term gamification and how it applies to education? You can just nod or shake your head or do this, which sort of means like, I don't know. Okay. So let me ask you this by a show of hands. How many people play video games of any sort? Okay, all right, good. So it's the idea, and I mean, really, it could be a multiplayer game. It could just be like you playing some kind of, online scavenger hunt game. I mean, it could be, as simple or complex as you want to think about it. It doesn't have to be anything super massive. So the idea is with gamification in education is that you're going to take principles of video games and apply them to learning, right? Apply them to how you think about structuring your classroom, how you think about designing lessons for your students, how you think about how your students participate and what it means to learn. And you can get as complicated as you want with this. I'm going to try to keep it pretty simple today and then point out some ways that you can get more complicated with it if you're interested, all right? So this started for me, I don't know, 2 years ago or 3 years ago. I was at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and we had an IT guy who came to me in the spring semester and he said, hey, he's like, I would really like to play around with badges, right? The idea that, in a class, students do particular things, and then when you accomplish those things, you get a badge. And he said, would you be interested in doing this with me in the fall? And I said, absolutely, I will, I'll spend some time over the summer researching it and seeing what I learn. We can work on it. And so he, maybe like a month after telling me this, right, in like March or April, he got a new job and left. But I was already super interested in this concept. And so I went ahead and just did it anyways on my own. And in getting started with this, I found there is a website and it's called the Teched Up Teacher, T-E-C-H-E-D, techedupteacher.com. And the guy that runs it, his name is Chris, and he used to be, I can't remember, middle or high school English teacher. Now his job is a little bit different, but but he talks about using technology in education. It's a really nice blog to take a look at. He had on his blog, he had gamified his class, and he walked through step by step how to do it. He broke it down very nicely. And so what I did was I used his blog as a model, and then I also started blogging as I was thinking about this. I took it over to my blog and started blogging my thought process. And so I would say, here's what I'm learning on Chris's blog, and here's how I'm applying it to my class. So you can look at his blog. If you go to his blog and you type in gamification, it will bring up all the gamification posts that he has. Then you can come over to mine as well and type in the same word, gamification, and it will talk about how I took his ideas and applied it to thinking about my own instruction. And then I also talk about that first year that I did it, what happened when it actually hit the ground running. Okay, so what are the problems, what are the things that came up? So in thinking about this, the first thing that I did was I just designed, I went with one of my classes and I just designed it the way I would normally design it, right? So it's a college class. It was a master's class for practicing K-12 teachers. And I had taught it, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 times, a bunch of times. And so I already had a syllabus for it. I knew the content inside and out. And I think that's really important when you're trying something new like this, that you know the content of what it is that you want to teach really well. Because the gamification aspect of it can be a little tricky at times. And sometimes I found it to be tricky. I found it to be confusing. I found it sometimes to be overwhelming. I always found it to be fun. But because I knew the content and I knew what I wanted the students in my class to learn, I didn't get tripped up by that, right? So I could focus all my energies on just the gamification process. So I made a syllabus. Like, I just started off making the traditional syllabus that the University of North Carolina wanted me to make. I updated it. I wrote out all my assignment directions like I would normally write out assignment directions. It looked just like any other semester. And then when I had that set and I understood exactly what it was I was going to be asking students to do, then I went in and I started messing around with the gamification concept. And I think that's actually I think doing it that way allowed me to be successful because I had everything in place and then I could play with it, right? I wasn't playing with it and trying to figure out, what do I want students to read? What do I want students to produce? What do I want, what am I trying to teach them here? That was all in place. So I think as we start into this, I think it's important to note that if you're coming out of a traditional structure, it's okay to set that structure up first and, have that in place and then get in the sandbox with it and start messing around with it and moving things around and adding to it. So once I had everything set up in place, and actually, hold on a minute here. I can set this up so you can see my screen. I will show you what a syllabus looks like for this, because I think it would actually help if I just walked you through the thought process here. Okay, so let me share my screen with you. And here we go. Okay. All right, so does that say explore? Does that look right?
No, we can't see it.
You can't see it?
No.
All right, hold on. Let me. Oh, because now you should be able to see it. Yes?
There you go.
Okay, yeah, I just didn't click a button, of course. So let me just, all right, so once I got everything set up, and this is, I use Wikispaces from my syllabus, so you can sort of see, like, I've sort of alerted them to the fact that this is going to be a video game, and I put in a little Super Mario Brothers thing here. And I alerted them to the fact that there's going to be some things that are going to be different. So one of the things, and you can do this right away and setting up a gamified classroom, is you get experience points instead of grades. So this is a really important concept to gamification. So if you think about a video game, let me back up for a minute. If you think about taking a test in a class, normally in a class you can get let's say you can get 100 points on a test, right? And so in your mind, you start with 100 points, and then if you lose points, right, if you get answers wrong, then you get points to, right? So if there's 10 questions on your test and you lose one, you get 90, right, out of 100. Experience points operates in a completely different manner. So with experience points, if you think about entering a video game, you don't enter a video game with a set amount of points and then lose points every time you die or make a mistake or forget to do something or overlook something. You start with 0. And then you work your way up, right? And as you work your way up, you can level up. You don't have to introduce levels in a gamified class, but as you work your way up, you can level up. And so in my classes now, that's the concept that I use. Your points are your points. You start with 0, you earn them, they're yours. You're not losing points, you're always gaining points, okay? So that's a really important concept. The other thing to know, and I'll tell you this before I show you the points, is that experience points, a lot of college classrooms that I've seen will do, you can earn 100 points in a semester, right? And you might get 10% for participation and 50% of those points are for a project, but at the end of the day, it all adds up to 100. You don't do that in this kind of environment. In this kind of environment, you don't award 5 points or 50 points. You award like 1,000 points. You award 500,000 points. You award high volumes of points. And I think Chris talks about this on his blog, that this is the idea that you really want to just make your points sort of crazy and and wild and fun. You don't want to make them, you know, really tiny and small. So let me come over here. I'm trying to remember which one of these links I want to click on here. Exciting. Okay, so what happens then is once I have sort of set up what the different assignments are for teachers, and actually these are, I call them quests, right? So these are quest descriptions and experience points, and then I tell them also known as assignments and grades, okay? So it's changing the language. The language change is very important. So in some ways, this is going to look just like you always think it's going to look, right? We're going to have assignments, but we're calling them quests because in video games, we don't call things assignments, right? And you don't have grades, you have experience points, okay? In this particular class, they were required to complete 3 different quests, and then they had some optional ones, okay? And optional ones are ways of earning additional points. I don't call it extra credit, but the class is set up so that basically the only way to not get the grade, to get a bad grade is because you don't want to get it, is because you want a bad grade, right? Because you don't want to do the work, or you choose not to do the work, because you can really design this for the most part the way that you want to design it. All right. So let me come back over here. So then what I have to communicate is I have to communicate when you do all these different quests, how do you earn points and what does that translate into? I still, because this is still a university class, I still have to give them a traditional grade at the end of the semester, right? Like you know, Chris, when he did this in his high school class, he still had to give it, you know, he still give students an A or a B or a C. So you can, this is really easy to map back into a traditional system. It's really not a problem. And so what you can sort of see here is, right, they have a quest. This was a required quest. It was called Becoming Connected. And then they had a number of things under here that they had to do. And then it told them how many XP it was worth and then possible XP that you can earn. So some of this is pretty straightforward. You know, they had to have a Twitter account for this. I gave them 1,000 points for just opening one, or if they already had one, they automatically got it. And then you can see here, there's possibilities. If you follow 5 new accounts each week on Twitter, times 12, it's 4,000, times 12 is 48,000 possible points. That goes on, and, you know, and then it gives you the total. So I had to map this out for every single thing, right? Because this is the syllabus. I need to give them the syllabus by the first day of class. This next one here, this one does something a little different. I got this idea from Chris. We had a class blog, and there were 13 weeks during the semester when students could blog, okay? And so what you'll see here is post number 1, the first time you post, and there were guidelines, you know, in terms of word length and that sort of thing, but you could get 1,000 points. So you either met the requirements and you got 1,000 points, or you didn't meet the requirements and you did not get 1,000 points. So for the blog, they had to have anywhere between 500 and 1,500 words for their post. So if you wrote 400 words, you didn't get any points. If you wrote over 1,500 words, you didn't get any points, okay? And if it wasn't on topic related to the class, you didn't get any points. If you fell in those parameters, then you got points, okay? But the next thing that you'll see here is as you go up, like post 2 is worth 2,000 points. It's not worth 1,000 points, okay? So, and then they get a little bit more every time. It's, by the end of the semester, post 13 is worth 42,000 points, okay? So the more you do, theoretically, hopefully the better you are getting at this, the better work you're creating and producing, and the more value I'm putting on it. So, and then there were other things that I let them do. Like I really wanted to, so you can think about what do you want to encourage students to do? What do you want to push them to do? And how can you use this model to your advantage? So I had done blogging, had class blogs for a number of years by this point. And one of the things that I had noticed was a problem is that the students didn't put links, relevant links in. They didn't link to videos. They didn't put pictures in. And these are all really important components to blogging But I also, as the teacher, I don't want to be the link video picture, please. Like I don't want to be looking at things on such a minuscule level and detracting points. And I also didn't feel like, because I could have required it, to get your 1,000 points for your first post or whatever, you have to have, one of these things. But I also I didn't feel like doing that. So I decided it's a bonus. Okay, it's a one-time bonus. So if you put a relevant video inside your post that you found, you didn't have to make it, you got an extra 500 points. If you put a picture that was relevant, you got an extra 500 points. I'm not giving you 500 points for each one because I'm not trying to get students to put in 500 pictures in their post, right? But it's a one-time bonus that they can get. And so then not everybody did it, but people started doing it, and it did enhance the quality of the post. I also let them, if they wanted to, and this came in handy in terms of thinking about students who might, they might have emergencies, they might have illness, that sort of a thing. How do you deal with that in relation to this assignment? Because the thing with blogging is you need to have sustained engagement over time. You can't just blog 3 times in a semester and call that blogging. That's just not how blogging works. That's not how the genre works. You ideally need to be doing it once a week. But I understand that, stuff happens. And I also don't want to be policing that or having to award, okay, you get a pass, you can do a makeup post, you don't because your excuse isn't valid. So in thinking through this, I thought, how can I design a structure that alleviates me from having to decide if somebody gets to do a makeup post, but also could encourage students to maybe that are really into this assignment to do more work, okay, if they want to. So what I told all my students is, I gave them, these are the 13 weeks that you have for blogging. You're expected to blog once a week. And by the way, if you want, you can actually do it twice a week, okay? And so you can see here, right, post 1, and the first time you do it is worth 1,000 points, but if you blog twice in a week, the first time you do it is worth 1,500 points. So if you blog twice in week 1, you could earn 2,500 points, all right? And I did the same thing here with the whole picture linking thing. It's 500 if you put it in, but if you did it twice during the week, the second post got 1,000, okay? So you could earn, what is that, like maybe 4,000 points that first week. But the other thing to keep in mind here is because it's gamification, these weeks are not one-to-one alignment. So you could, as a student, do, post once a week for 6 weeks and be getting all these points. And then in week 7, say, you know what, I'm going to post something extra this week. But because it's your first time posting something extra, you don't get, even though let's say it's week 7, and this is what let's say that's how many points you earn, 12,500, because you've posted once a week for 7 weeks. I don't come down here and give you 13,500 because you've posted twice, right? It's your first time for posting twice. So the first time that you post twice, you get 1,500 points. It doesn't matter if that happens in week 1. It doesn't matter if it happens in week 10. And the same thing here, because I will tell students, you don't have to blog all 13 weeks to get an A in the class, okay? But you can usually miss 2 weeks and be fine. And I will tell them this, and I will say, but don't skip the first week or 2 unless you have no choice, right? Save that for some really real emergency because, again, I don't do makeups. But I will have students that they don't start posting until week 3, okay? So if you come in on week 3, all right, that doesn't mean because it's week 3 you get 3,500. It's your first post, you get 1,000. Okay, it doesn't matter when you start. All right, the weeks don't match necessarily to the syllabus, if that makes sense. So that's the way to think about it. I think everything else in here is pretty much follows those rules. Are there any questions so far? If there's a question, I can't hear it. I can't. It's garbled.
Sorry, we just got one student who all of a sudden became too shy to talk. 1 second.
Okay.
I'm going to show myself. Oh. He's not going to show himself, but he has a question.
You know, hold on. You know what I'm wondering is there's a chat feature on here, right? Can people just type in the question?
Good morning. As I was, I don't know if I understood bad, but what I mean is like, all right, you get like get experience by doing some activities, right?
Yes.
Are like the grade based on how much experience you got?
Yes. So let me show you that. Let me see if it's on this page. Okay. So, all right, it's down here at the bottom, and excuse me. So the way that Chapel Hill did it for a master's, they didn't give A, B, C, D. They gave H, which was called a high pass, a P, which is called a pass, or an L, which is a low pass, or basically an F. So what I did here, and I've played around with this, is I told them your criteria for an H is you have to get total 900,850 points. But I had 3 quests that were required, okay? And so you can't, I didn't want them to say, well, I like blogging, I only like blogging, and that's all I'm gonna do. I'm gonna earn all of my points from blogging, or the majority of them from blogging, and ignore these other things, okay? So I wouldn't let them do that. But I have in here how many points from each quest they would have to earn to get an H, for example. Okay, so this one had about 195, blogging was almost 192, and then they had a project they had to do that was a 45,900 and up, okay? So what I tell them up here is you must earn all the criteria for a level in order to receive that grade. So for the H, which is what they would want, most of them, they have to get at least 900,850. So that's one criteria, but they have to meet these other 3 criteria below it. So if you got like 1 million points, but let's say all your points came, you know, primarily from blogging, which I don't think is possible, but I'm just gonna make this up for an example. That's not gonna give you an H. Okay, or if you did blogging and a bunch of optional quests, that's not going to give you an 8 or an A in the class. That's not going to work. And then the same thing for a P. You have to have a certain amount, and then that amount, you have to have at least this many. Now, if you add up these numbers here, they don't come out, right? This is not going to come out to 900,850, right? If you've got 194 and 191 and the 40, almost, 45.9, that's not going to add up to 900,000 points, right? So what I'm telling them also is they have to find other ways to earn their points. There are optional quests that I have given them. So we had a class blog, right, that they posted to. They could earn optional points by writing comments, and there was a set of directions for what that looked like. They could lead a class discussion. That's what this was. There was an activity involving social networking. They could do that. I didn't want to require that because I knew that not everybody would be comfortable with that particular assignment. So, and it wasn't central to the course. So it's an option. If you don't like it and you don't want to do it and it's not your thing, then don't do it. Go do something else. That's why it's optional. There was some stuff with Twitter that they could do that, again, it was optional, all right? So some of this is about, here's what I expect you to do, and then in terms of required assignments that you have to participate in. And then I made some optional things, and they're gonna have to go into the optional things to pass the class. They can't just rely on doing the bare minimum requirements to pass the class. So what ends up happening then is they get to structure what they want this to look like for them in some way. We also did a few things here. We had in-class quests, and we had something called Popup Quest. And so I'll talk about those real quick. So when I started out, actually as a doctoral student, teaching undergraduate classes, I would get people's syllabi, and they would always have something on there that said participation. And participation is worth 5% or 10% of your grade. And that always perplexed me, and I think it perplexes a lot of people. How do you measure participation? Because I don't want to tell you have to participate X number of times in class, or over a certain period of time, because I don't want to count you. I don't want to be sitting there counting how many times you've raised your hand, and I don't want you thinking about your participation in that manner. So how do we do that? Okay, so I found that with this system, I could actually do that pretty well. So this is what the syllabus typically looked like, and what I would do in class, you can sort of see here, there's different points given out. This is how I started doing participation, how I got, I think, pretty good at it, is this was a hybrid class. It met typically every other week, and then in between we had online meetings. And when we met in person, we met for about 3 hours. And so I would always come in here and sort of write out, here's what we're going to do. I put in links to videos and readings, and here's what you need to be prepared with, et cetera, et cetera. And so you can see in here this week, we had something called the Digital Challenge. And they had listened to a podcast, and we were going to be talking about what was in the podcast. And then they had a challenge to complete. All right, share your ideas about best practices in digital literacies with the world. And then it tells them what they have to do. And so before they even came to class, this was a year ago, so I'm trying to remember what I wrote here. They could crowdsource some ideas, and I gave them a link to that. And I'm always looking for ways to make this easier for me as a teacher. Right? So I tell them, and I think these little things matter. When adding an idea, group all your ideas together. So if I have 20 to 25 students in a class, I don't need a big document and going through and trying to find out how many times you personally contributed and scrolling up and down. Put all your stuff together. Okay? That's how that's how you're getting credit. And I tell them, I'm not going to scroll around in here. And then these are participation points. And I'll give them points all the way up to 4 here, putting up to 4 ideas. And you can see if you put it 4 ideas, your first idea is worth 500 points. And then the next idea would be 1,000, or you could get 1,500 total. And by the 4th idea, you can get 2,500, and it tells you total possible 5,500. Now, this 5,500, when you come back over here, it's not in here, okay? These are class participation points that vary depending on how difficult or simple I think something is. So all I have mapped out is the stuff that that you can count on, the quests, and all this other stuff is participation. It beefs up your grade, right? So you do need points. You need to come to class to get points, because just doing the basic requirements is not going to be enough to pass the class, okay? So this is one way that I thought about utilizing participation. They have, I gave them 20 minutes to complete the challenge, and then I gave them 8,000 points. If you were present in class during this 20 minutes, okay, then you did your stuff, then you got 8,000 points, okay? And then you could get a bonus if I considered your work to be of good quality. So there are some times where I do give people time in class to work on something. They get points for that. And those points go into the pool in terms of helping them, up their ante and up their grade. And then I will say, if you want to continue working on this, if you want to bring this to a final polished product, sometimes that fits into what we're doing, it makes sense. Then I will offer them even more points if they work on an app outside of class and bring it back, but it's not required. So that is, in class, let me go through every window I have here. In class, what an in-class quest would look like. And then we had something called Popup Quests. And Popup Quest happened during the very first year that I did this. Some students came up with an idea where they wanted to be able, because we ran this program through in cohorts. There were 2 cohorts going on at once, and they wanted to be able to talk to the other cohort, and they wanted to be able to get input about questions that they had from the teachers in the other cohort. I thought that's a great idea. I don't know how to do that. But what we did was we made what we called a Popup Quest, which is a Popup Quest is something that is, it's not on the syllabus. I didn't know it was going to happen. It is something that popped up in response to a need that it could be one student, it could be half the class, right? It doesn't matter. It's in a response to somebody's need where this particular quest or challenge could help you in some way, could help that student in some way. And so I just basically make it up on the spot, or I go home and think about it, or, you know, sometimes students have ideas. I have it written in where if you have an idea for a quest that you would like to see embedded into the class, even if you end up being the only one participating in it, that doesn't matter. We can do that. We can put it on the syllabus. We can make it an option for people. And then I'll give you points because you were the creator of it. So those happen as well. All right, I'm going to stop here. Are there any questions?
Yeah, we have questions.
Mm-hmm.
Good morning, doctor. I have 2 questions for you. The first one is, how can I do to keep with gamification, but in a rural place?
How can you what?
How can I continue with gamification in a rural place? Like, like, I don't know, with the woods. I don't know if you understand me.
No, I got
in a rural place, because the idea is so cool, and you can change it, the activities, like keeping the interesting with the students, but I don't know how to keep that in that kind of place, because if I don't have the elements, how can I keep my students to catch up day by day with the activities, with the points? I don't know that.
Okay. Do you want to ask a second question, or is that the whole thing? The
whole thing.
Okay. All right. So let me see if I understand this right. So gamification in a rural setting, is it the struggle? Is the struggle like a lack of technology? Because technology, I'm using it for this, but you don't have to use technology at all for gamification. Is the struggle a lack of technology, or is it students coming consistently to school, or is it students being behind and certain things and needing to catch up?
No, I think it's only technology, because the students can go every day to school, but if some of the elements, how can I catch up every day that they don't need anything? Because I saw some of the activities you need obviously a computer. So
okay, so it's a technology question, and I mean, you obviously need to have some way to communicate to them what they're going to do, but I don't think you need technology to do this at all, right? If you don't have any technology in your classroom, I'm just making I'm just making an example here. If you don't have any technology in your classroom, if you didn't have access to the internet, or if your students didn't have access to the internet, you can still do this, because it's a mindset in terms of learning. So let me say a little bit more about that, right? So they earn points, right, for doing things. They don't lose points. But then also, right, they can redo things. So if you think about this from a video game perspective, when you get, like on the first page of the syllabus, I had I had a Mario Brothers video, right? So if you get to the end of the level on Mario Brothers and you fight the dragon or whatever, and you lose, right? You either start over again at the beginning, or you back up slightly. Some of these games don't make you start at the beginning again, right? You just back up to like the last saved place, right? And you start from there and you do it again. So that idea of maybe I took a quiz in your class and I didn't do well. Okay, maybe you're fine with my grade, but maybe I'm unhappy with the grade myself. Or maybe I didn't meet whatever the requirement is to move on to the next set of activities or things I need to do, right? I can go back and potentially retake that quiz. And you can put limits on this, of course, but I can go back and redo that. I can go back and do some other activities or participate in certain events to help me with my learning before I do that, right? And then do that quiz again or redo a project again. The idea is that you can as a student, right, stay sort of in a particular zone for as long as you need to until you're ready to move on. So in that sense, right, technology doesn't need to be a part of it, but I think you have to just sort of figure out how you communicate what options are available for students and what those points are for students. And Chris gets into this in ways that I don't at the college level, but that work really well for, I would say, like 5th grade on up, where, you know, he will have students will be in, he doesn't call them teams, I forget what he calls them, but basically they're in teams, and each team has a name, and you know, they can compete against one another and have little fun battles and things like that he sets up for them. The other thing too, and this is not answering your question, but I do want to show you, because you could make this, well, it's sort of answering your question, because you can make this in your classroom. I used in this a leaderboard, right? So you can think about the leaderboard, you know, when you finish a video game and it says, like, you know, it shows you the top 10 people or whatever, right? So the leaderboard here, I only had, I'm guessing in this class, 5 people that wanted to participate. I made it optional, okay, because I knew this wouldn't be everybody's shtick. Kids really like this, okay? So if you're working with kids, they really, my sense from what I've heard from talking to people that do this with middle and high school kids, is they love the leaderboard, be it with a team or be it individually. They like to see where they rank. And so I asked everybody to make a pseudonym. Chris talks about how he did have one student who did not have a pseudonym, and he talked to the kid about it, and the kid said, I want everybody to know who's kicking their butt. Like I'm ahead of you and I want you to know it. But I required it. And I said, you have to use a pseudonym. And I also told them that they could, if they at some point decided that they didn't like this idea, that they could ask me to take them off and I would remove them, no big deal. And if they decided that they liked it and they wanted to join, they could join. But what it does is it ranks you, it shows you points, like a leaderboard on a video game. But what I like about it is, because I'm not usually into like ranking and things like that, but what I do like about it is as you're going through the semester, you start with 0 points. But if you know you need 1 million points to get an A, that's very overwhelming, okay? And you're starting basically at an F and you're working your way up. And that can be, if you're not used to thinking about it that way, it can be very overwhelming and discouraging. And so what I found the leaderboard to be helpful with is say, look where you are in relation to everybody else, okay? And even this semester, I will show you something that I did for this semester to make it a little easier in terms of thinking about communicating grades. Again, I'm doing this with technology. You don't have to do this with technology. All right. So I'm going to open up a grade sheet. This only has, I think, students' first names on it, so that's not terrible. I think that's grades back there. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to open up, let's see, Aaron's grade sheet here. So what you'll see is down here, actually, wait a minute, yeah. Let me not do, Erin's actually a bad example because she's like really done a lot of work and she's really far ahead to the point that I actually don't update her sheet anymore. Okay, she's okay with that. So what you'll see here is I've been documenting all the stuff that they've been getting, and there's more work than they need to do. Okay, I always give my students more work than they need to do, and I tell them that, and then they can pick and choose how involved they want to be across the week. So that's up to them. And so I update these once a week. And so this is the total column. This helps them because I want to try to help them understand you're doing okay, you're not doing okay. You need to be thinking about getting some extra points, or you could kind of take it easy this week if you wanted to. So you can see this person has 990,000 points. As of this point in the semester, 2 million points have been available to them, right? So this tells you how many you have earned. This tells you how many you could have earned if you've done every single little thing, okay? Now, what I have done for students starting this semester is I have mapped out for them what it takes to get a B in the class. So at Wyoming, they do a traditional A, B, C, D kind of a thing for a grade. So I'm telling them, if you want a B, here's what you do. And if you want more than a B, if you want an A, then you need to make a plan to figure out how you're going to get extra points. They're always available to you. Every week, there's extra stuff that you can do. You make a plan, you figure it out. So I have here what's called a target. And so the target is, are you on target for a B as of week 7? Because that's what I've done the grade sheet for, as of week 7 in the course. So as of week 7, if you have 435,000 points, you are on target for a B, okay? If you have less than that, then that could be cause for concern. She obviously has more. She has 990,000, so she's fine, okay? And actually once they started hitting particular letter grades, I started letting them know, okay? So at this point, she's got enough points that she has a C in the class, if the class were to end today, okay? And then I have all the stuff that they're doing and what they need for a B, okay? So we have a weekly challenge, and she needs 270,000 points to get a B, and she's earned 325, okay? We have a weekly chat thing. She's earned 500,000 points. She needs 500,000 points to get a B. She's earned 630. So she's on track for an A. Even though right now her letter grade is a C, we're only just a little bit past halfway in the semester. So, and these things down here don't come into play yet. But this, I think, sort of also helps keep them on track so they don't panic. Yes, is there a question? No?
Thank you.
Yes?
Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
My question is, this experience points rating system is really good, but since there are a bunch or a lot of ways to earn points, isn't it hard for your students to keep in touch with anything, like knowing what to do, remembering everything, or is it hard for you to explain? How much do you take to explain your students to really know that they understood the grading system?
Mm-hmm. So is it hard for, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And the other question is, I understand that gamification could motivate students, but it also has the risk that they understand the activities as a joke, not a joke, but a game, something that they just want to play and don't want to win. So how do you keep them motivated to win the game, for example?
Okay, so here's how I understand this. So how do I keep track of all of this, right? There's all these points going on. How do I not lose my sanity?
And how do you make sure that they understand? Does it take a lot of time to make themselves clear that they have to make something, that they have bonus, that they have things to do, and to make them remember that, maybe?
Mm-hmm. Right. So how am I keeping sane? How am I keeping them motivated? And how am I making sure that they are understanding this system? Right. So I will definitely say that I've been doing this for several years, 3 or 4 years, I'm not sure. And I think at the beginning, it was more of a nightmare for me than not. So over time, I've looked for ways to make it really, really simple. Now, this class that you're looking at is, it's 100% online class. So, and there are things that repeat each week. They have to engage in weekly discussions. So those are always the same point system is always in place. They have to engage in weekly challenges. The same point system is always in place. And if you look, you'll see here, these points, for the most part, keep repeating. 50,000, 75,000, 125,000. There's 100,000 in here. And then again, it's the same point system right here. So I've got it refined to the point that I mean, this is just repeating every week. Every week you can earn the same basic minimum stuff. Now, it's easy in the sense that it's an online class and I want there to be some consistency. When I come over here, for example, to a class that's a hybrid class, this hybrid class is not as, the format is not as consistent as the online class, okay? Because the hybrid class, I'm meeting in person with people. So when we had, for example, in this class, when we had this digital challenge, well, in my online class, I can take something like this and just move it online, right? And I have to, you know, adjust the time frame that it happens in, and I can, you know, change the point system so that it aligns with something that's consistent. What I found with something like this, where I'm face-to-face and the points are varying, you know, 1 week we're face-to-face, 1 week we're online, we're doing different things. I have to sit down on a very consistent basis to update these I have a spreadsheet for each student, right? So you can see that here. These are all spreadsheets for each student. So each student gets a spreadsheet the first week or two of class, and they can't edit it, obviously, but if they see mistakes on it, they can alert me and I will correct them. And so that's one way that I communicate with them, that they know what's going on, okay? With something like this, when we had class, for example, on September 12th, I guarantee you September 13th or September 14th at the latest, I had sat down, I knew I had already written down during class who was there or who was not there, made any notes I needed, and I went through this sheet. So this, anytime you see this little XP in bold, that's for the students, of course, to know what they can earn, but it's also for me, because I can go through here and very quickly see what do I need to award, okay? And then if I have a class of 20 or 25, I can start with one person sheet, and I can do this entire, this section here on, we had a discussion on defining digital literacies and digital competencies, and then everybody that was there, right, that's gonna get these points, I can just cut and paste across the board to the extent that that's possible, right? Not everybody always gets all the points for any number of reasons. I had a link, right? I had a link in here where you could crowdsource ideas. I'm sitting down, I'm opening that up, I'm giving people their points, right? I'm doing it ideally within 24 hours, at the worst case scenario, within 48 hours, okay? So I had a system set up where once a week, I always sat down and I went through this sheet, right, for a face-to-face class. And then I had to go through any additional material that they had completed to update. And then once I updated all the spreadsheets, and I still do this now, once I update all the spreadsheets, I email the class and I say, your grade sheets have been updated through this date. You can go and look and see if it's correct. If you have questions, you can let me know. And that is, you know, I basically tell them to stay out of the grade sheet until they get that email, because I could go in and, you know, I might start working on something today and then something comes up and I only partially do your grade sheet, and then you think it's wrong. It's not wrong. It's just I didn't get to finish it like I thought I would. So to prevent them from sort of panicking or getting upset and me having to deal with that, I tell them, you'll get an email. It'll tell you once a week. It's updated through this date. Go check it. If there's problems, let me know. So I think this is communicated pretty well. I make for my students, let me see where it is in here. A series of videos. I don't know where they are on this, on this particular one, but I have for each class a playlist, and actually I've deleted all the videos for this one at this point because it's an old class, but I have for each class a playlist, and it has videos that walk them through every single aspect. So I'm on course information right now, and I'll have a video that tells you just about course information. that's not really a gamification thing. That's just me trying to make sure that information is communicated to them. So when I get to stuff like quests and when I get to talking to them about their points, there are short, focused videos that walk them through this. I have no, okay, we go. That walk them through this and show them how it works, show them their point sheet, explains how experience points are awarded, that sort of thing. So they can always ask me a question, but there's also videos that tell them exactly what to, exactly what to expect and how to interpret it. And then the other thing about motivation. So what's really interesting, I clicked on Erin's grade sheet. Erin came in and she's doing all of that, right? This woman came in and was just knocking it out of the park. She was just doing every single thing she could possibly do, and she was doing it really well. Okay. And so now she has sort of hit a point, and she's actually already by the halfway point in the semester, she had an A. So I told her that, I said, you can make this class be anything you want it to be now. Okay. Because you don't have to worry about a grade. What do you want this to look like? And she actually ended up having some health issues. So it's probably good that she doesn't have to worry about her grade or worry about, do I have to come back and take this class again? I had another student that is in the same boat, and she told me, she said, I really want to focus on giving the teachers in the class, right, more feedback on their work and really being able to listen to them better than I have been. So when the students, when they do hit an A, depending on where they are in the semester, I talk to them about, what do you want this to look like for yourself? And there's only a couple of them, but they're still involved, they're still participating. But they're doing it completely on their own terms now, right? And I've discussed that with them and set that up with them. Other students, I would say, are pretty much kind of, they're just staying on track and doing, what you would kind of normally expect. And so in this class, I don't see there being any real motivation issues. Some people do not like this format, okay? Some people hate this format. They can't wait for the class to be over so that they don't have to do this anymore, because they just want to be able to go, they just want to do it the way it's always been done, because that's what they're comfortable with. So I think if anything, you might expect some pushback, because they're not, you're giving something that they're not comfortable with. And I do ask them to have a certain amount of blind faith and trust that, if they do what I tell them they need to do, it's going to turn out okay. But I haven't had any real motivation issues. And because I've read Chris's blog, but I've had some personal conversations with him as well. He has not had any real issues with motivation either, because what you can do with this is really set it up so that your students are having more autonomy over their learning. It's not a free-for-all. There are parameters, but they can have a lot more autonomy. And I want to show you one of the things that we have over here that I just realized is we have these bonus passes. So this is the gamification aspect, and I've got 4. And what happened is I had a student who, it looked like the student was going to be failing the course this semester, like just wasn't doing the work, and I was following up with the student, and, at some point, she told me what was going on, and I thought, and she asked for an extension. And I thought, I can't just give you an extension. In this environment, I'm not going to give just you a special treatment. It either goes to everyone or it goes to no one. But I decided it was worth doing to everyone, and we've actually developed some here. So this idea of break the lock, that's the extension. And so the idea is you meant to do something this semester, something happened, you didn't do it, you missed the deadline, you would still like to do it. You can do one thing and you can turn it in at any point in the semester and you can potentially get full credit for it, okay? And then I have one where it's the same idea, but you can only earn as much as 50% credit for it. You can turn it in at any point. The get out of tech one, somebody had a tech issue, and so I made one where it was like you got an extension for 24 hours beyond the deadline because you had a tech issue. You were trying to do it, your computer died and you just need a little more time. Okay, you can do that once. And then I had a create your own challenge. So every week in class, I have a challenge for them to do. And so I said, you make up, maybe there's something you want to do. It's in line with the class, okay? It's in line with the class content. You come to me, you tell me what you want to do, we'll figure it out, and you can go do it, and you can bypass my directions. And I'm willing to let you do this for multiple weeks, right? Like if you have something that's going to take multiple weeks to complete. So you can do that one time. So these are different passes that people can enact to help with their learning or help with their grade.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning.
Hi.
I have a couple questions. If or when they reach the amount of points needed for an A or A+, how do you encourage them to go the extra mile? I mean, to go in and do these bonus points?
Right. So first of all, I don't have that happen too often. So I think what's amazing to me is that for most of the classes that I've done this for, you know, what I tell all my classes is sit down the first week of class and map out how you want to get your grade. Sort of figure out your path. You may not stick to that path, but at least you have a plan. You've thought about it, okay? You can really dig into a lot of the stuff, and you could have an A like halfway through the semester, right? I give you so much stuff that you could legitimately do that. I think this is the first time I've ever had anybody do that. So most people, first of all, most people don't do it. It blows my mind, but most people don't do it because it can theoretically make your life easier the second half of the semester. So anyways, when I saw it happening this semester, what I did was, I reached out to those students. I let them know, you've got all the points. And I also told them, I'm not going to keep updating your sheets. Like why would I keep updating your sheet if you have an A, right? The point is here so that you can see what your grade is progressing. They were fine with me not updating their sheet. I think for these two students, based on what I've seen about their work, this was never about the points. Okay. This was always about the opportunity to learn. These are practicing, both of them are high school teachers. So this was always about being able to take new ideas from the class, try it out in the classroom, and then share those experiences back with their colleagues that were in the class with them. So this was never about that for them. So when I went to them and said, you've got an A, right? And so that's what I would do. I would just say, okay, look, you've got an A, right? You've got all the points. You've done all the things you need to do. In a way, it really frees you up. I mean, because theoretically, you could do nothing for the rest of the semester. These are your points, right? You don't have to do anything. So that is technically an option. I've never seen anybody enact that, right? Because what I've seen is they come to class because they want to learn, right? They do the work because they want to learn. And they're really engaged in this. So what I tell them is this has freed you up. You get to have an experience that most people don't get to have. Now let's think about, what do you really want to do the rest of the semester, right? Talk to me, right, about it. I don't let them come to me. I don't put it on them to say, hey, I noticed I have an A. What do you think I should do the rest of the semester? Put it on them and say, what do you want this to do? Let's talk about it. And then I have them set, a couple of goals that they want for themselves within the class. And then that's what they do. So I let them take over and decide what they want to do. As long as it aligns with the class, I'm fine with it. And we don't announce this to anybody either, by the way. We don't say, oh, these two students over here, they have an A, so they're doing some different stuff or whatever. We don't announce that, but it's just understood between me and them that we're going to craft something that really digs into what they want the rest of the semester to look like, and they get to be in charge of that.
But I will go to continue for another hour or two, but we have to call it short because there's another class at 12, and we really had 1 hour with you, and that's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing. Leigh, I want to thank you for helping me sharing with us with the ideas of gamification, giving this raise up as teachers some idea that they may be able to implement in the class. Probably you got to think about how I can do it myself. So that's always good.
It's fun, and you can go. I mean, this is just like a dipping your toe in the pool. You can go so deep with this stuff and do so many amazing things. In terms of, we didn't get in, like, you can do leveling and you can do badging and you can do, you can have people earn points and spend points on prizes. Like Chris has a whole thing on an item shop that he has for his students. I tried that. I didn't find that the students that I had, they weren't really interested in that, so I didn't utilize it. But you can develop an item shop, and they can these bonus passes that I have up here that I gave teachers, you could sell those based on points that they earn. And there's just a whole way, a whole realm that you can dig into. So I really encourage you to look at Chris's Teched Up Teacher blog.
Sounds good. Nice to follow the state of the hall or applause. Now, is it okay if I give them your email address so you can have any questions?
Yeah, absolutely. They can do that.
Excellent. So I guess, once again, thank you for joining us today. And
thank you. I'll see you in a month.
Yeah, we're still talking to the OIC chat anyway, so we'll talk.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.